Welcome back to the governance topic of this advanced MOOC on freshwater health. The fifth segment of this topic looks at something that is the likely reason that brought most of you to this course in the first place, the ambition to achieve results, to make a future freshwater initiative a success. In this day and age, we are usually expected to describe intended results in great detail in advance and present plans for measuring performance. Let's take a closer look at what having success means in practice. Fundamentally, all policy or resource management initiatives start with a problem that needs to be solved. Accordingly, the most obvious definition of success would be problem fixed. Unfortunately, it is not quite that simple. Let's take the example of the Caucasus that once required water to irrigate its agriculture. As you can see from the slope of the diagram on the top left, the area under irrigation did increase dramatically with the water management choices made. However, the remaining images illustrate the very famous resulting impact on the Aral Lake. So, a problem was solved. But would you call the initiative successful? In fact, the history of water management is a history of man-made disasters. Around the world, hundreds of billions are being invested right now to fix problems caused by successful water management. Cities like New Orleans and Venice are highly vulnerable after losing their wetlands. Flood peaks threaten cities along tamed rivers after every rain, and entire rivers rise above the landscape because sediment is no longer deposited or land subsides around them. You might think that all these disasters were caused by destroying ecosystems, so conserving and improving freshwater ecosystems surely is a better solution? Perhaps. To the best of our knowledge, it is. But to the best of the knowledge of past water managers, draining swamps and preventing floods was also the right thing to do. So, a key question for any responsible 21st century water manager thinking about results has to be, what happens if you get it wrong? Is the result a leaky pipe or a new desert? Maybe that ecosystem that you are making healthier will be the incubation space for the next big invasive species that wipes out food systems and costs billions to fight? Of course, the chances of such a result are remote, and this introduction certainly does not want to suggest you should think doomsday scenarios all day. What it wants to highlight is that results orientation means to be analytical and critical, to look at lofty promises in a methodical and data-driven way, questioning assumptions and looking for aspects that you were not aware of when you started. With that philosophical perspective in mind, what is the practical side of results-oriented planning and managing? First, we have to ask what a result is and who creates it. As discussed in prior videos, many stakeholders influence the state of a water system. So, on the one hand, when measuring success, you don't want to be held accountable for actions of people you have no control over. On the other hand, if you limit the definition of results to your own work, and in the end the ecosystem is still degraded, can you claim to be successful? The answer to that dilemma starts with the framing of your freshwater initiative as an intervention taking place in a societal context. You recognize societal needs linked to a basin or freshwater system, and you plan to take action and intervene in ways that improve the situation. Freshwater health is a concept you plan to draw on to set objectives, mobilize input resources, and design activities, three core ingredients of an intervention. The intervention itself, the plan, the objectives, and the implementation of the activities is largely under your control, and some direct results of activities equally are. However, just as you did not create the societal needs that triggered your plans, some results will be created beyond your initiative. We account for them by defining three different types of results. Results-based management calls results produced under your control outputs, results your activities directly contribute to outcomes, and broader results triggered in the wider environment impacts. A key challenge in the results-based planning process is the choice of appropriate objectives. If most of the results, the outcomes and impacts are not produced under your control, how can you set realistic objectives and measure the degree of success? Setting objectives for your Freshwater Health Initiative is the first stage of results-based thinking and means to describe what you are trying to achieve. The first and most obvious objective would be to create and maintain a healthy freshwater ecosystem. However, this will take years and requires results beyond your control, as just pointed out. Also, those among you with some management training might recall that objectives are supposed to be smart, and diffuse impacts at systemic scales are by definition difficult to measure. So, to bring objectives to a realistic level, it is better to link goals to the performance, efficiency, process, or acceptance of the outputs and outcomes you will produce and contribute to, and not to the final hoped-for impact at the environmental and ecosystem level. Recalling earlier topics of this MOOC should clarify why objectives for a resource management initiative do not necessarily need to mention the ecologic status of an ecosystem. Freshwater management rarely intervenes with the ecosystem itself. It targets social and economic drivers that create pressures on the ecosystem. Accordingly, would not your definition of success equally describe changes in social, political, and economic areas where those drivers are located? As example, creating a conflict resolution mechanism might be a planned output of your freshwater management plan. However, the intended outcome is not the creation of the mechanism, but having a mechanism that is being used by stakeholders and resolving actual cases. Accordingly, a performance or acceptance goal would be appropriate for this particular output and a good basis for a smart objective. The second element of results-based management is combining good objectives with measuring and monitoring progress towards their achievement. Just as environmental management is based on systematically monitoring the state of the ecosystem, so results-oriented management is based on monitoring performance. For activities under your freshwater plan, monitoring should happen continually so that adjustments can be made along the way. For example, if you open a visitor center for public awareness and nobody visits, you might decide to start a publicity campaign right away and try to improve performance. A challenge much bigger than defining realistic objectives is the creation of a so-called impact logic, which explains how outputs will contribute to outcomes and how those outcomes will then lead to wider impacts in the environment and society. Too often, initiatives apply magical thinking, especially when making assumptions about human behavior. In a very common example, resource management plans often involve collection of more environmental data, and then impact narratives declare that better data will automatically and immediately lead to better decisions. To take a more realistic view on impacts, results-based management places actions in three spheres. The sphere of control is relatively small and encapsulates only actions of partners and alliances with direct relationships. But these actors, in turn, interact with and affect other actors, forming a larger sphere of direct influence. If you recall the last video, you might recognize that this is actually stakeholder engagement, and that stakeholder engagement shapes the sphere of influence in the results-based view. Beyond the sphere of influence is the more diffuse sphere of interest, the area where you want to create actual change. You might think of your planned activities a little bit like creating a Newton cradle. You hold the red ball on the left, and you want to create momentum and movement in the blue ball on the right. So you need some balls in the middle, aligned in the right way, or no energy will ever reach the blue ball you are trying to move. Planning impact pathways starts by selecting domains the initiative seeks to affect and to describe specific changes you aim to trigger. Typically, 5 impact domains are used as a starting point, and you might notice that these are in fact the same systems that the context analysis described in video 6.2. Depending on the nature of your initiative, you will then need to consult substantive expertise to design good impact pathways with realistic mechanisms for affecting human behavior, social practices, or political reform. Assessing the impact of a complex initiative is a challenging task that, again, will require expertise and sophisticated methods tailored to the topic and context you are working with. This slide shows just a few examples of existing assessment frameworks one could draw on. However, one crucial take-home message to share is that any solid impact assessment does not happen at the end of an initiative. Impact assessment is ultimately a before and after comparison. So if you fail to assess the state of systems when you started, you will never know if you actually made any difference. In conclusion, results-based thinking means to define success and design pathways to achieving success in methodical and analytical ways, while allowing room for the possibility that your assumptions are incomplete or wrong. It also means to ensure that all monitoring and evaluation is not set up as an end in itself, but as a means to good evidence-based decision-making and intrinsically linked to the management of your initiative.